The fork slipped from his fingers and struck the plate with a sharp sound that felt louder than the entire restaurant. For a second, every breath in his chest froze. Across the sunlit café, a familiar woman carefully set her purse down at the small reserved table by the window, the very table he had booked under his own name. He stared, confused first, then uncomfortable, and finally unsettled in a way he couldn't explain. Because the woman who had just sat there wasn't a stranger who had made a mistake. It was Alina Rauf, the quiet coworker who barely spoke beyond polite greetings, the one who always left early and never stayed for office lunches. Before we begin, if you believe kindness and second chances still exist in this world, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Shadowverse. Your support helps stories like this reach the people who need them most. Hamza Qureshi had not been on a date in 5 years. Not since the hospital corridor smelled like antiseptic and grief, and a doctor avoided his eyes while explaining what words could never soften. Since that day, his world had shrunk to a 2-bedroom apartment, a tiny kitchen table covered in crayons, and a small hand gripping his every morning. His daughter, Noor, was 6 now. She had inherited her mother's habit of humming while drawing and her father's habit of worrying about things she couldn't control. Every morning she packed his lunch herself, usually uneven sandwiches wrapped in too much foil, and reminded him to smile at work because grown-ups forget how to smile. It was Noor who had secretly made the online profile. He discovered it when his phone buzzed during a late-night spreadsheet session. A message from a name he didn't recognize. A gentle introduction. A question about favorite books. He thought it was spam until Noor appeared behind him holding his old laptop, eyes wide with innocent guilt, explaining she wanted him to have someone who laughed again. At first he had refused. Then he had postponed. Then he had replied only out of fear of hurting whoever was on the other side. The conversations remained simple, safe, almost shy. No pictures exchanged. Just small stories about workdays, coffee preferences, and how both of them disliked loud places. When the other person suggested meeting at a daytime cafe, public, bright, comfortable, Hamza agreed mostly because Noor squeezed his hand and said he deserved a friend. Now he watched Alina at his table. His first instinct was embarrassment. Had she mistaken the reservation? Maybe coincidence. The city was big enough. Offices were nearby. People ate lunch everywhere. He almost stood to correct her, rehearsing an apology in his mind. But then she pulled out her phone, paused, and her shoulders stiffened the same way his had when he first opened the app. Her eyes lifted, scanning the room with fragile hope, and landed directly on him. The realization did not arrive dramatically. It unfolded slowly, painfully, tenderly. The familiar kindness in her expression, the careful distance she kept at work, the quiet warmth in the messages, they merged into one person sitting in sunlight, suddenly vulnerable. He understood then. Neither of them had recognized the other through words alone because both of them had hidden behind simplicity. Hamza didn't move for several seconds. His heartbeat thudded in his ears like footsteps down a long hallway. A part of him wanted to leave, not because of her, but because of the weight of what this meant. His private loneliness had collided with his real life. The safety of strangers was gone. But Noor's drawing folded inside his wallet pressed against his chest, a stick figure family with an empty space beside them. So he stood. The walk across the cafe felt longer than the past 5 years. Every memory moved with him, late bills, sleepless nights, fevers at dawn, school meetings attended alone, birthdays where he clapped twice as loud to fill silence. He wasn't afraid of Alina. He was afraid of hope. He reached the table and sat down gently, the sunlight falling across both of them. Neither spoke at first. They simply shared the same startled relief, the kind that comes when loneliness recognizes loneliness. Alina worked 2 floors below him in accounting. She wore soft colors, never joined office gossip, and always packed her own food. He remembered once seeing her in the elevator holding a children's book she claimed was for a niece, though she never mentioned family again. Over time, fragments surfaced. She lived alone. She preferred mornings. She avoided crowds. They had existed in parallel worlds separated by office walls and guarded hearts. The date did not become magical instantly. It became real. Their hands hovered around cups of tea while midday light warmed the window. The tension softened into something gentler than romance, understanding. They spoke about ordinary things, the kind people only value after surviving extraordinary loss. Burnt toast disasters. Favorite bus seats. How rain sounds different depending on whether you were safe inside or still walking home. Hamza admitted he had a daughter and waited for the subtle shift people often made, the polite retreat masked as kindness. It didn't come. Instead, Alina's expression softened with recognition, not surprise. She confessed she helped raise her younger brother after losing their parents early, and responsibility had shaped her life the same way parenthood shaped his. Two lives defined by showing up even when tired. The cafe filled with lunch-hour chatter, yet the table by the window felt suspended outside of noise. Neither of them tried to impress. Neither exaggerated happiness. They simply allowed the truth to exist between them. Both had been surviving, not living. When the bill arrived, Hamza instinctively reached for it, but Alina gently insisted they share it. The gesture carried more meaning than politeness. It was not independence. It was partnership, even if only for an hour. They walked outside into warm daylight where the city hummed with ordinary life. Street vendors called out, buses exhaled air, children laughed from a nearby schoolyard. Hamza realized how long it had been since he noticed these sounds instead of rushing through them. He expected the awkward goodbye typical of cautious adults. Instead, they paused, neither wanting to break the fragile courage they had found. Days turned into small routines. Coffee in the office cafeteria became shared instead of solitary. Lunch breaks stretched a little longer. They spoke about Noor, about responsibilities, about fears of failing someone who depended on them. Alina never tried to replace anyone. She never crossed boundaries. She simply showed up, helping Noor with homework one evening, attending a school art fair another, always standing slightly back so the child could choose comfort at her own pace. The real turning point came on a bright Saturday afternoon when Noor fell from her bicycle and scraped her knee badly. Hamza panicked more than the injury required, old trauma disguised as concern, but Alina knelt calmly beside the crying child, cleaning the wound while telling a ridiculous story about how scars are proof of brave adventures. Noor stopped crying, not because the pain vanished, but because someone new had chosen patience. Later that evening, Hamza sat quietly watching his daughter sleep, a cartoon bandage on her knee and a new drawing beside her pillow. 3 stick figures again, but the empty space was filled. He understood then that healing doesn't arrive dramatically. It grows quietly through consistent kindness. Months passed. The office rumors eventually surfaced, but neither rushed labels nor promises. They built trust the slow way, through mornings, errands, shared responsibilities, and mutual respect for grief that never fully disappears. One afternoon Noor asked if Alina would attend her school play. Hamza hesitated, worried about moving too fast, but Alina waited for the child's invitation instead of his approval. Noor held her hand before the show began, deciding the pace herself. Afterward, walking home in the golden glow of late day, Hamza realized the weight he carried had changed. Not lighter exactly, just shared. Near the end of this story, if it has touched even a small part of your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and share this video. Your interaction tells the algorithm these human stories still matter. He eventually returned to the same cafe window where it all began. The reservation was under his name again, but this time there was no confusion, only intention. Noor sat between them coloring quietly while sunlight painted the table warm. Hamza didn't deliver a grand speech or perfect words. He simply thanked Alina for choosing patience over distance, understanding over assumption, and presence over fear. Because sometimes love doesn't start with sparks. Sometimes it begins with recognition, two tired people realizing they don't have to carry life alone anymore.